What's good? It's Woog. Undisputed versus Undisputed. Let's go. We've got Saul Canelo Alvarez, 59 wins, 2 losses, and 2 draws, defending all of his 168-pound super middleweight belts against Jermell Charlo, 35 wins, 1 loss, and 1 draw. And Jermell Charlo is the undisputed champion at super welterweight or junior middleweight, 154. So Jermell Charlo is going to be going 2 divisions up to challenge Canelo Alvarez. And the road here and the path here was a pretty improbable one. You know, once upon a time, most people know they were both at 154 at the same time, as was Jermell's brother, Jermell Charlo. Now, at the time, and for the few years that followed that, I had always seen Jermell Charlo as being a better stylistic matchup, or rather better suited to beating Canelo Alvarez than I saw Jermell Charlo. Now, as their careers would have it, especially when you consider Jermell Charlo's last few fights that made him undisputed and his brother Jermell Charlo's very unfortunate fight-by-fight schedule at middleweight, and basically his one fight since Sergey Derevianchenko, one of Jermell Charlo's best wins, and then the recent 2 years of inactivity, and then the reported mental health issues and so forth. It turns out, or at least as it stands right now, Jermell Charlo has had the better career between the 2 Charlos. Again, when they were both at 154, you would pretty much have to give the edge to Jermell Charlo. He had beaten the slightly better fighters, and just in terms of being an overall round winner, I mean, they were both knocking most of their opponents out, but Jermell Charlo, I thought, was a better round winner, minute by minute by minute. I always thought that Jermell Charlo was the more vulnerable to losses, and this is even before Jermell Charlo lost to Tony Harrison. And quite frankly, the night of that fight, both brothers were on the card. I actually thought, before they announced the scorecards, that Jermell Charlo should have edged that first fight against Tony Harrison, and I thought that Matt Korobov might have gotten the win. It was very close. Matt Korobov might have gotten the win against Jermell Charlo. And, you know, those first few rounds against Matt Korobov, that was pretty much the only time I can recall seeing Jermell Charlo, not Jermell, but Jermell Charlo outboxed. Otherwise, Jermell Charlo was not only knocking most of his opponents out, but he was winning most of the rounds in just about all of his fights. Whereas Jermell Charlo, I thought I saw him getting outboxed by John Jackson, where Jermell Charlo saved the day essentially with an 8th round knockout. I thought I saw Jermell Charlo, you know, getting outboxed to a degree in that first fight against Tony Harrison. And not only in the first fight, but in the rematch against Tony Harrison, I thought that Jermell Charlo, and I think on the unofficial scorecards, he was losing that fight like through 8 rounds. So he knew that he was getting outboxed in the first fight, still kind of got outboxed for most of the second fight. So it's like, did he make the necessary adjustments? Well, Tony Harrison was, you know, showboating and got a little careless late, ended up getting knocked out in the 11th round. So once again, the knockout saved the day as far as I saw it for Jermell Charlo. And then obviously he had a split draw against Brian Castano in their first fight. A lot of people thought that Brian Castano was deserving of that win. I thought that that one really could have gone either way, but it did start to increasingly feel like things were feast or famine for Jermell Charlo in a lot of his fights. Now, earlier in his career, when he was fighting guys like Gabriel Rosado and Vanes Martirosyan, I thought that he was a little bit more of he was a tactician, but he wasn't as explosive and dangerous as he was when he linked up with Derek James. And then now, even more recently, he has invited Johan Guzman to the camp. So it's interesting with Jermell Charlo because, yes, he was a tactician back in the day when he was beating Rosado and Martirosyan via decision, and then he became a more dangerous, but as far as I saw it, a little more feast or famine in terms of round winning before you score the knockout, or being vulnerable to possibly losing on the scorecards. So it's been very interesting. But in his very latest fight against Brian Castano, I feel like we saw the very best we've ever seen of Jermell Charlo, where he moved around the ring well, but he kept his back off the ropes, and he's also a very dangerous fighter when he's on the ropes. Of course, you would advise him to not fight off the ropes against Canelo Alvarez, but in a lot of his fights, he's at arguably his most dangerous when he's near the ropes, maybe not totally back against the ropes, but very close to the ropes. And you could see that in several moments, not only in the rematch with Brian Castano in Carson, California. I actually attended that rematch. That was a fun boxing viewing experience. But even in the first fight, Jermell Charlo had moments where he was dangerous fighting off the ropes. But I do think that that rematch against Brian Castano is probably the best that we have seen, where he really put it all together. He was exercising the jab. He was winning more of those minute by minute frames where it wasn't so much feast or famine. He was mixing up the jab high and low. He was throwing that right hand up top and then angling out of danger. He was keeping, or at least picking, a lot of Brian Castano's punches off with his high guard. I don't look at Jermell Charlo as being a great slipper, although I did see an improvement in him slipping punches in that rematch against Brian Castano. Go rewatch that fight. Very entertaining fight, and that is Jermell Charlo's most recent performance. So he was supposed to fight Tim Tszyu. Tim Tszyu's been long a mandatory for Jermell Charlo. So they actually set that fight up before Jermell Charlo injured his hand, broke his hand in sparring, and it's kind of been a long recovery process to where, you know, Tim Tszyu's been knocking out Tony Harrison, knocking out Carlos Ocampo. He's about to fight Brian Mendoza. Tim Tszyu's been getting busy and has been extremely impressive. I would have really loved to have seen Jermell Charlo versus Tim Tszyu. I just want to see how that one would play out. But as fate would have it, Canelo Alvarez signed a 3-fight deal with PBC, and he was supposed to fight Jermell Charlo. But, you know, a few days into that being the reality, it turned out Jermell Charlo decided to turn that fight down, saying that he wasn't in the headspace and wasn't ready to prepare for that fight given that time frame. So exit Jermell Charlo, enter twin brother Charlo, Jermell Charlo. So this has been a very interesting run, and obviously Canelo is one of the kings in boxing. I would argue that he's still the king of boxing, even if you were not enamored with his 2 or 3 most recent performances. His decision loss against Dimitri Bivol when Canelo was storming the gates at 175 after conquering 168 minus David Benavidez, but we'll get to that. David Benavidez was just named the WBC mandatory, and they said that Canelo's going to have to fight him, I think, by like springtime of 2024. So keep your eye on that development. But yeah, he challenged Dimitri Bivol at the time, and a lot of people forget this. Canelo was actually a sizable favorite over Dimitri Bivol. Put it like this: Canelo was a bigger favorite versus Dimitri Bivol than he is in this fight against Jermell Charlo. Think about that. But yeah, Dimitri Bivol beat him by unanimous decision. The scorecard should have been way wider than 115-113, which is how all 3 judges had it, which is pretty inexplicable. It was like 9 rounds to 3, or maybe 8 rounds to 4. You could even argue maybe 10 rounds to 2. This was a clear Dimitri Bivol win. And just the idea that if Dimitri Bivol gave up one more round, we would have had possibly a draw against Canelo. That would have been crazy. But between that loss to Dimitri Bivol and then the unanimous decision win in the trilogy fight against Triple G, and then the unanimous decision win in Canelo's homecoming fight against John Ryder, a lot of people are thinking that Canelo's best days are behind him, and a lot of people think that they have seen a precipitous drop in Canelo's performance abilities. I am less convinced of that. I think that we are more or less getting the same Canelo. Now, you could argue that he was at his absolute best when he was at 168, when he knocked out Caleb Plant to become undisputed, and in the fights prior to that, where he, you know, after being embroiled in that dispute against Golden Boy Promotions, his former promoter, they then quickly, with Matchroom, scheduled Canelo Alvarez versus the WBA undefeated WBA 168-pound champ Callum Smith. Canelo pretty much beat him from pillar to post. Didn't stop him, but won I was very surprised at how wide a decision this was. I thought that this was a very dangerous fight for Canelo, but he beat up on Callum Smith's arms, pretty much had him against the ropes for much of that fight. Canelo just went to town, and then he knocked out Anthony Yildirim in the kind of an in-between fight. Like 3 months after the Callum Smith fight, he knocks out Anthony Yildirim, and then 3 months after that, he stops Billy Joe Saunders. Now, I thought that Billy Joe Saunders won a few of those rounds. A lot of people thought that Canelo was clearly winning on the scorecards. I didn't see it like that. I thought Billy Joe Saunders was having a lot of success. Canelo caught Billy Joe Saunders, set him up a few times because Billy Joe Saunders was dipping to that same side. Canelo caught him with kind of a scooping right hand that aimed low, caught Billy Joe Saunders right in the face, basically damaged his orbital, and they stopped the fight after that round. And then it was after that that Canelo stopped Caleb Plant in the 11th round. So yeah, very impressive performance by performance schedule since leaving Golden Boy, and then just basically rampaging through the 168 pound division. Again, minus David Benavidez, who was a WBC champ twice, lost it twice without losing a fight, once due to recreational drugs, and then second, losing the belt on the scale before fighting Alexis Romer Angulo. But even given those accomplishments from Canelo Alvarez, plus beating guys like Daniel Jacobs, Erislandy Lara via close decision, and just, he's got 59 wins, and he's been fighting at an elite level for like more than 10 years. It's been a great run. But still, to me, the most impressive thing that I've seen Canelo do in the ring was his 24 rounds against Triple G. Yes, I thought Triple G won that first fight, but going into that first fight, I was almost certain that Triple G was going to stop Canelo. I really thought that, I thought that Canelo was walking into an execution in that one. And he ended up going the 12-round distance, not once, but twice. And the second fight was a lot closer, in my view, than the first. He was awarded the decision in the second fight. The first fight was a controversial draw. Both fights, very controversial decisions. But just him going those 24 rounds without hitting the canvas once against Gennady Golovkin, I thought that was ultra impressive. And ever since then, Canelo can't surprise me any more than he already did, because I did not see that coming. Again, even though I thought Triple G won the first fight, and arguably I thought that the second one could have gone either way, but still super impressive two performances. Say what you want about who you thought won the fight, those were impressive performances from Canelo that exceeded expectations, at least in my book. But as we're sizing up Canelo Alvarez versus Jermell Charlo, again, Canelo's a sizable favorite. He's like a 3.5 to 1 favorite, something like that. Now, when they first announced this fight and they announced that Jermell Charlo would be stepping in instead of Jermall Charlo, I was like, I hadn't even thought about Jermell Charlo fighting Canelo for like several years. Like basically since Canelo went to 168, at 160, it was like maybe one day, but Jermell was still at 154. And again, he was looking very good. And yes, he has eventually become the undisputed champion. But again, I always saw him as being the more vulnerable. And I was just hoping that if one of the Charlo brothers was to fight Canelo Alvarez, that it would be that prime version of Jermall Charlo. Even when Jermell Charlo would float out the idea of challenging Canelo, and I think he called him out a few weeks before the fight was in fact made, I didn't make much of it. I'm like, well, Jermell Charlo might have his hands full with Tim Tszyu, and we don't even know how Jermell Charlo would do at 160, let alone 168, because Canelo's never coming back down. I don't think he's ever coming back down. He said he's never coming back down to 160. So this was like the furthest thing from my mind. Canelo Alvarez versus the 154 undisputed champ Jermell Charlo. So when you start thinking about it, it's like, okay, well, Jermell Charlo's always been taller than Canelo, but Canelo's been spending his last few years fighting the likes of Sergey Kovalev, Triple G, big guys. I mean, I don't know what Callum Smith versus Jermell Charlo would look like. I don't know what that would look like, but I saw what Callum Smith versus Canelo looked like. So it's like, on its surface, it's like, nah, this isn't a good idea. Yeah, I mean, I applaud Jermell Charlo for daring to be great. I mean, he's clearly legacy based, and he really cares a lot about proving his greatness. That much is clear, but it just seems very ill-advised, and especially being that you haven't had one fight at 160, let alone one fight at 168, and your first dabbling in this division, 168, is going to be against Canelo Alvarez. Look, unless Canelo Alvarez is totally just hit a cliff and is a shell of what he was, which I don't think is the case. And I do think that he's more motivated. I know that there was something about one of his sparring partners coming out saying that he's not motivated, but look, I'd have to see it to believe it. I'd have to see Canelo Alvarez really just dogging his approach to the sport for me to think that he's going to be taking Jermell Charlo lightly. Like, Canelo Alvarez has known about Jermell and Jermell Charlo for years. So I think that I don't think that Canelo Alvarez wants to lose to Jermell Charlo. So, I mean, stylistically, let's think about this. When we're talking about what Jermell Charlo can do to win this fight, first of all, he's going to have to fight the fight of his life. Now, what does Jermell Charlo weighing more? What is that going to look like? Is he going to forego a little bit of his speed, a little bit of his movement, a little bit of his endurance? Or is he going to gracefully grow into that division where he doesn't lose any of those attributes? Like, it's really asking a lot to expect Jermell Charlo to basically be an exact replica, a 168-pound version of the guy that we saw knocking Brian Castano out in their rematch. Like, I think that I just don't think that it's realistic to expect that you're going to get that. Now, if you look at Jermell Charlo's fight against Brian Castano and Canelo, they're about the same height. I get it. They're not the same fighter by any stretch, but I think that that's more of a look. It's not the same thing. But it damn sure isn't going to be Tony Harrison or, Jorge Cota or, Jason Rosario that you would look at to get a good idea of what to expect when Jermell Charlo fights Canelo Alvarez. So Brian Castano, about 5'8", about the same as Canelo's height. Now, some people might say Brian Castano's 5'7". They're about the same height. Now, I do actually think that Brian Castano has more aggressive feet, faster feet to be able to, to move in on you and to come in low, look for his opportunities. I feel like his feet are a little bit more active than Canelo's. Canelo will step and slide using some of his head movement. Canelo's head movement is superior to Brian Castano's, and Canelo is a lot more sudden with his punches. Brian Castano is pretty sudden as well, but I just wonder how Jermell Charlo, how this fight will look in terms of, will it have the appearance that Jermell Charlo is trying to stay away from Canelo, or will it look like he is willing to somewhat stand his ground? Because I think that it's going to be hard for Jermell to win rounds if it looks like he's on his bike, so to speak. So he's going to be sticking the jab out for sure. I wonder what type of success Canelo will have in countering Jermell Charlo's jab by throwing the right hand over it or on top of it. Canelo is very good at doing that, just waiting for that jab. I don't think that he's just going to sit back and be eating jabs. Jermell Charlo's good. He's not Dimitri Bivol in that regard. I mean, they are of a similar height. Dimitri Bivol might have an inch or two in height over Jermell Charlo. But when Jermell Charlo is sticking the jab out, he's not going to do so without the repercussions. Now, as Canelo comes in, again, will Jermell Charlo be able to stand his ground? Because when Brian Castano would come in, Jermell Charlo would start letting punches go to the body with both hands, and those were having an impact. Even Jermell Charlo's jab to the belly area of Brian Castano was having an impact. Obviously, Jermell Charlo's devastating, electrifying right hand. I mean, look what he did to Erickson Lubin. That was one of the most impressive moments of Jermell Charlo's entire career. He can electrify you with that right hand, even though it was a left hook that got Brian Castano to buckle and to fall forward. So Jermell Charlo, very hard left hook, very hard straight right, good movement and good angles. But I just wonder how resistant Jermell Charlo will be to Canelo's punches. I think that we're going to be able to tell a lot in the first 2 to 3 rounds. We're going to see how comfortable Jermell Charlo is in the moments where he does stand his ground and trade a couple of punches with Canelo. I don't think that Jermell Charlo is going to be able to win this one on the scorecard without really getting his hands dirty and mixing it up a bit with Canelo. So Canelo, we know that he could splash with that left hook, and he throws that left hook high, or he could throw it to the body. He's got a very nice right hand, straight right hand as well, and he could throw it with a loop or throw it straight. Now, I do think that he has to be comfortable letting his right hand go. It's almost like he's got to set the table. He's got to establish certain things before he starts just letting off with right hands. Like even if you look at the way that he knocked Kovalev out, he really knocked him out or buzzed him and put him out of his senses with his left hand first, and then he finished him with the right hand. That's kind of the case in a lot of Canelo's fights. He will hurt you the most with that left hand. There are exceptions. He's hurt people with both hands. He's had a very fantastic career. But I just wonder how Jermell Charlo is going to react when Canelo is kind of showing him that head movement. You know how, I mean, his head movement, I've got to say, the one degradation I think I have seen is his head movement in the second half of fights. If you look at his head movement when he was fighting Daniel Jacobs versus how his head movement looked against John Ryder and even against Triple G in the second half of the fight. We don't even have to go there with the Dimitri Bivol fight. We know what we got there. But I thought that his head movement was a little lazy, a little sloppy. It's almost like his lower back was tired or his legs were tired. I mean, he's put in so many rounds, and that, you know, he is older in boxing years than his actual age. But I wonder when he's starting to flash that early round head movement and his very economical style, and it's become increasingly economical. Like, I feel like he used to throw more punches round over round. Now he sits on his punches a lot more, but he's not as busy. He's looking to maximize impact per punch rather than to out volume you and just put on a boxing clinic. Now, he is super technical. He just tailors that in a way where he's able to mitigate risk and move his head, get out of the way of your punches, and then look for his opportunity to really splash with his power punches. I wonder if Jermell Charlo is going to be able to find Canelo with the jab in a way that Daniel Jacobs was not able to reliably find Canelo with the jab. I tend to think that, you know, yes, Jermell Charlo is dangerous fighting off the ropes, but you still don't want to go there. And I saw Brian Castano able to land straight right hand leads. Even in the middle rounds of the fight that Jermell Charlo knocked Castano out, Castano had success with straight lead right hands. And that's not even Brian Castano's thing. And yes, Castano obviously also had success with his left hand, with his jab and with his hooks. And sometimes Jermell Charlo would kind of put his head down and just kind of wing a couple power punches before, again, angling out of the pocket and then taking the fight back to the center of the ring. I wonder how much of this fight Jermell Charlo would be able to keep near the center of the ring, and as he starts to slowly perhaps get back up towards the ropes, I wonder if he's gonna acquiesce and if he's gonna oblige fighting off the ropes, or if he's gonna angle out and insist, either tie Canelo up and then move back to the center of the ring, or is he gonna again fight and exchange with Canelo with his back against the ropes? Or, I mean, you know what would really surprise me is if he's able to back Canelo up and not only stand his ground, but get Canelo to just kind of catch punches and to nod his head like, you know, that you're not doing anything, and then to shell back up like he did in those moments against Dimitri Bivol. I don't expect that to be the case, although I do think that Jermell will have moments of doing that. How much is his power going to carry to 168? Will he be a dangerous knockout threat against Canelo? Because I really do think that Canelo will be a knockout threat to Jermell Charlo. There are just wild cards. I mean, they're just X factors here in terms of how Jermell Charlo is going to grow into 168. But man, I mean, this is a really tall order. Even if you look at the recent histories of guys going up 2 weights to fight, you've got Rigondeaux going way up to fight Lomachenko. Didn't go well for Rigondeaux. You had Kell Brook going way up to fight Triple G. Didn't go well for Kell Brook. You had Amir Khan going up to like 154, or was that even 160? I think Amir Khan fought Canelo at 160. Did not go well at all. I mean, he had some early round success, but you saw how Amir Khan ended up against Canelo Alvarez. And then with Mikey Garcia going way up to 147 to challenge Errol Spence. Didn't go well for Mikey Garcia. I mean, look, if past is prologue, this is not going to end up going well for Jermell Charlo. I admire his heart. This guy is a true warrior, and he's trying to test himself against the absolute best. And let's be frank, if he's able to pull this off against Canelo, that will be truly a historic feat. I'm actually going to take Canelo Alvarez, though. I think that he is the fight. He might drop Jermell Charlo, and it's going to be one of those moments where I think that there's going to be a moment of clarity or a moment of reckoning where Jermell Charlo, where it'll be clear that, damn, Canelo is looking very strong in there against Jermell Charlo. Now, again, if Canelo Alvarez is truly past his prime and Jermell Charlo could fight the fight of his life, this could be an amazing upset. And yes, I am saying upset, even though, again, once upon a time, these guys were both at 154. But just given today's context, yes, this would be a significant upset. But I think that Canelo Alvarez is going to be the one packing the punch here. I think Jermell Charlo is going to try to box effectively and then let his power punches go. He's going to do everything that he's been training and kind of building. He has been rounding out his skill set to where, again, I think that he is at his best, or at least was at his best about a year ago in terms of putting all of the tools together. I just don't think it's going to be enough to beat Canelo. He's going to have to get Canelo's respect pretty early. You can't give the impression that Canelo's walking you down. And even if Jermell Charlo is having success from a sweet science standpoint in certain moments, he just has way too much of a history to me, whether you're talking about his fight against Tony Harrison, his fight, even moments against Austin Trout where he won a majority decision. Now, Austin Trout is a tricky fighter who I thought fought very evenly with Canelo Alvarez. That had one of those BS live scoring or, open scoring where they let you know, hey, look, I thought that, Austin Trout should have been up like 3-1 after 4. And then they announced it and it was like Canelo up 3-1 or something like that, where it's like, damn, yeah, I guess Austin Trout doesn't have a chance here. But in terms of what my eyeball saw, Austin Trout gave Canelo Alvarez a lot of problems in that fight. But yeah, Jermell Charlo, we have seen him get outboxed, and more importantly, I've seen his volume reduced, where it's like, hey, any day now, like against John Jackson, I'm like, damn, is John Jackson gonna pull off a decision win against Jermell Charlo? Come on, Jermell, get busy, right? And this was all the way back in 2016. So again, we are dealing with a different fighter today, but still, I wonder if Canelo is starting to roll and if Jermell Charlo is a little bit spooked by the power, if we're going to see Jermell Charlo start to fight a more cautious fight where he's not letting his hands go enough and then he starts dropping rounds. I kind of think that we're going to get some semblance of that. I'm going to take Canelo Alvarez. I think it's going to be a competitive fight in certain moments, but I think Canelo Alvarez is going to win like a 8-4 type of fight. I think that Jermell Charlo is going to give it his all. I think that he's going to make this interesting in certain spots, but I don't see him pulling off the win. I don't see him knocking Canelo out. I mean, Canelo's got one of the most robust chins. 24 rounds with Triple G, going the distance against Dimitri Bivol. Like, the guy obviously has an outstanding chin. And I don't see Jermell Charlo boxing well enough to win more rounds than Canelo wins, at least with the official judges' scorecards. I just don't see it. I'm going Canelo Alvarez, something like 8-4. Let me know how you think this one plays out. It's not the fight that we wanted. Of course, I still want Canelo Alvarez versus David Benavidez, period. But it's the fight that we've got. And yes, it does carry a bunch of intrigue, but it's just a head scratcher. It's like, damn, really, Jermell? Okay, here goes, right? Because again, he's making his divisional debut, 2 divisions up, skipping 160 and having that first fight against Canelo. There are just too many things that are stacked against Jermell Charlo. Plus, how recovered is his hand? We've seen Canelo have 1 fight since his hand surgery. This is going to be Jermell Charlo's first fight since his hand surgery. So that's another wild card to deal with. I'm going Canelo Alvarez, something like 8-4. Let me know your thoughts on this one in the comments. I think that Canelo Alvarez is going to start finding a home eventually with the right hand. I think he's going to end up putting a bit of a beating on Jermell Charlo, hitting him more as the fight progresses, even though Jermell Charlo is a very good finisher and his power carries. Whatever power he's carrying into this fight, I expect to carry into the late rounds. Canelo Alvarez, on the other hand, starts to slow down in the late rounds. So I think that Jermell Charlo might even mount a bit of a comeback to make this one interesting in the final rounds and might give a very inspiring performance. But I still think that, you know, it's like Triple G gave an inspiring last few rounds, but it wasn't enough to close the gap against Canelo. I think that Canelo is going to win more rounds than Jermell Charlo. I'm taking Canelo here. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. How much of a chance are you giving Jermell Charlo in this fight? I give him a ton of respect for taking this one. I have long respected Jermell Charlo. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on Canelo Alvarez versus Jermell Charlo. And where do both fighters go from here if Canelo wins and then if Jermell Charlo wins? If Charlo wins, do they do an immediate rematch? I'm sure, you know, Jermell Charlo would be down, but this is going to tell us a lot about where Canelo is career-wise. And this, I mean, Jermell Charlo just taking the fight tells us a lot about Jermell Charlo. But I mean, is he 1 foot in, 1 foot out? Is this a cash out fight for Jermell Charlo? I don't think so. I think he's really legacy chasing right here. And I do think that he's open. At least he says that he's open to coming back down to 154. I've got to see it to believe it. I think that he might be done at 154. I do think he's done at 154. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on Canelo Alvarez versus Jermell Charlo. Like the video, subscribe to the channel if you are into the fight talk. I'm Woog. Thanks for tuning in.